Sangye Chendan Zoge Chonam La Janjo Barandu Dani Gyapsunji Dagi Jinsoingi Besanangi Dolai Benchire Sangye Dobaisho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until, through the merits of my generosity and so forth, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of benefiting beings.
So, last time we talked about the direct perception and the conceptual experiences as a part of analytical meditation. Today I will say a few things about the perception in the reaction followed by that perceptions, or let's say the reaction towards that perceptions, which is the fundamental kind of law that how our mind works, in the sense that our conceptual mind sees something as a image, or this makes certain kind of concepts, and then we react. So the reason what happens is that our reactions are based on what kind of perception or the perspectives that we have. We can also, in Buddhist term, we call the right view, or the view, and the action, and that is the reaction that is coming from a certain kind of view. And since all our, whether we call it suffering or happiness result, it's a result of our reaction towards something, and our reaction comes from what kind of perceptions that we have. So basically you have a right perception, and because of that you will have a right reaction, and as a result we will have a right kind of actions or result. When we have a wrong perception, we react mistakenly or errorly, such as because of not seeing and seeing rope as a snake is a wrong perception. And because of that, it creates the illusion, or it creates the scariness. That's what we explain as in the suffering. So if you see rope as a rope, no illusion, no suffering. And if you see rope as a snake, and then there's an illusion and there's a suffering, and it goes as a loop. So actually, when we say mind or thought or emotion, actually it's just these two things, two or three things you can say. It depends on how you dissect them. Perception, something, and then reaction, and then as a reaction something happens. So the foundation is that the general purpose of doing that is that to understand our mind and thought, instead of just looking at it as in the lump, it's good to know that it's not a one thing, there's several things, and it has a process. So yeah, when we say thought or mind, actually we are talking about these two things or three things. Let's say three things: the perception, reaction, and the result. And mostly we are talking about mental suffering or mental habits or mental calmness or mental disturbances. So once we recognize what is right view, right perception, right reaction, right result, and wrong perception, wrong reaction, wrong result, of course, based on whether it brings calmness, happiness, or it brings disturbances and the suffering. We will see quite easily that what are the healthy and what are the unhealthy, in the sense that, okay, so our mind will be perceived something, our mind will be react something, and something will happen. So we cannot stop that. That's how mind works. But you can kind of filter, you can kind of choose. You cannot stop that process because it's not how mind functions. It's not how you work with the mind. But you can actually choose the healthy process or unhealthy process. Of course, it takes time, or it takes some kind of habits, but it's possible, very possible. It happens once a day or gradually, but it's possible. So when we say, in a way, when we say I'm meditating, we're not trying to cut the process of mind. We're just trying to build, filter, recognize healthy process or unhealthy process, and trying to reduce the unhealthy process and increase the healthy process. So how to do it, where to start. Okay, so actually you can do from the action, reaction, perception. Okay, we can also do something, react something, and to have a certain kind of perspective. You can also do this. This is one way to look at it. Change the action, through that change the reaction, and through that change the perspective, right? This is one way to look at it. This is where looking as in the process, not the how actually mind functions. How we train, how we do that, so that we have a healthy process, not the unhealthy one. But how, let's say, how we get angry. Yeah, let's say the anger thought or the angry emotion. It also goes from the opposite way. That means you have a perspective. And because of that, you react certain way. And because of that, you act. React as in mental reaction, and act as in you actually physically or verbally, doing something. So if you look at that chain of that thought, the actual action coming from the reaction of the mind goes back to the perception or perspective. So from that point of view, if you go to the fundamental level, then we can say that actually we have to but we have to filter our perspective first, because this is the whole story starts. Means we have to see, we have to investigate, and we have to make sure that I'm seeing what it is instead of what you want to see. So for example, the seeing, make sure that you're looking at the snake at least, right? Not the rock as a snake. And second thing, sometimes intellectually we know what is there as an object, but still we don't react according to what intellectually we think. So if you go to the first thing, important to see the object, what it is, but sometimes there's a gap. You kind of assume intellectually something is something, such as an impermanent. Let's say if we ask and if we rationalize, yeah, it is an impermanent, right? But do we really react when it happens? Many times we don't. So you see clearly that sometimes, many times we react some sort of accordingly when it is direct. There's a flower, there's less kind of speculations and the assumptions, contractness. But when it comes to our conceptual thoughts, especially anger, those big emotions and thoughts, it's not really coming from how our intellectual mind sees or thinks. It always is hijacked by our habit, our subconscious mind's old habit. So this is I think, biggest challenges, and also biggest, how to say, like ourselves, we study Dharma, we kind of practice, but then we don't change much because of this point. And you study, yeah, it makes sense, but then same old, yeah. And sometimes so it gets more and more confused that your intellectual mind is telling you one thing, and then your, how to say, subconscious mind is doing something. So more you do, the more sort of conflict is there, uncomfortability. There are many reasons behind that, because when you say habit is not one thing, there's a lot of things that's happening. This is the way meditation comes in actually. So of course we can study or convince someone what is impermanent, it doesn't take that much, and we can show them, demonstrate whatever is possible. But does that mean that this person have a complete perception of impermanent? Intellectually yes, but practically no. So why we are not reacting according to how we intellectually perceive things? Because of, we call it ignorance, but it basically means the strong habit and the strong gap between our conscious mind, intellectual, and the subconscious mind's habitual tendencies, the old patterns, not being able to let it go. We call it ego. Ego's rigidness, habit. So when we say meditation, actually this is exactly what we are doing. We know a little bit, study a little bit about what it is, what is right perception and what is wrong perception. And in order to go to the second one, how to react right way, and you meditate. So how to do that? You send from the intellectual mind, right perception's message, to our subconscious mind, wisely, again and again, because it's a habit, and you have to undo the habit. You also have to build a new habit, against it. And this is what we call the meditation. So familiarizing your subconscious mind to your right perception, making the link, filling the gaps that we have right now. Now, when we do that, you will see there's two kind of reactions. One is very, we talk about the long-term memory and short-term memory. Similarly, we have two kind of habits. One is temporary, but it's quite effective actually, and it can be changed easily. And one is more built up for a long time, and it's not that easy to change suddenly, whether it is good one or bad one. So like we have one kind of reaction you can actually change quite quickly based on what kind of perceptions that you're changing. And one is still there even though you change perception because it's a long-term habit, so to speak, tendency. For example, let's say I can give you my own example. One time I was in some small place having tea and reading in a small tea shop, and suddenly there was some young guys came, Tibetan young guys, and they would start talking loudly and smoking a lot, and it was a lot of smokes coming, and making me a little bit uncomfortable from reading. And I was reading book, but still in my mind I was talking about these guys are careless, indisciplined, all this, how they. So much anger is building me up and negativity is coming up my mind. And then suddenly one guy looked at me and came up and said, "Oh, Kushala." Kushala is a Tibetan word for the monk, with respect. "Oh, Kushala, I didn't know you are here. We are very sorry. Did the smoke disturb you?" So immediately, when he said that to me, with nicely, that realizing that actually they didn't knew that I was there. It was kind of dark, and of course they were also busy with their own kind of doing things on the table. So they did it, and when they realized, they felt bad, and they say, "Did it bother you, or should we go out?" And say, "No, it's okay. We'd go on." And all the anger just stopped there. No more mental stories there. And of course, still smoke was there, but it was not bothering me at all because my perception of this guy changed. Before, it was so irritating environment for me. But then after that incident, even though the environment is same, smoke is still there, but I don't feel that they're disrespecting me, anything, just young ones, let them do what they're supposed to do. And everything was quite well, in a way. So what I'm trying to say is that certain reactions comes from the certain perspective. And when you change the perspective, reactions change immediately. It just takes the small, changing the perspective. So it could be good, it could be healthy one, unhealthy one. But usually for example, in this case, it was anger and then just change into something that is not anger. Probably I even felt a little bit like compassion to this. Nicely saying, "Oh, did it bother you? I'm sorry." Of course, it's coming from my ego. Oh, why they didn't ask me, or why they didn't consider me, I'm not smoking, all this my ego, but that's how our reaction makes based on the perception that I have. And of course this perception is also coming from lots of my own, like, let's say I am myself a smoker, I won't mind, because I'm not. So I'm expecting, since I don't smoke, you should not. And And also I'm also top of that, since they are Tibetan, and then they should know that, how they can do that. If they are not Tibetan, maybe they don't know that. So I'm making so many stories to prove that they should not do that, what they're doing is wrong. And that the more I think about it, the more it makes, my anger comes up. So these are short-term kind of reactions. And it really depends on, you change the perspective, your reaction will change quite easily. Now, the long-term reaction habit is, of course, built on many of the short-term reactions. So when you have a certain kind of reaction towards the certain kind of environment, again and again, and it becomes the long-term one. So long-term reactions would be, let's say there's somebody that I don't like and I hate, or let's say my enemy. So there will be small things changes. Sometimes he might smile you, sometimes not, or sometimes talk, sometimes not. Maybe one day is good to you. But somehow behind your mind, he will be always something that is object of aversion. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't change like that easily, because you have this long kind of habit or the memory of that person as being bad, or whatever it is. So it will be a long-term object of aversion, and you will always react according to that. Of course, this is also can be changed, but it's not similar to the short-term kind of, you change the perspective and everything changes. It doesn't happen that way. So what I'm trying to say is that the thought and our reactions can be changed based on what kind of perspectives you have. And to do that, you can understand what kind of perspectives you have, and also what kind of reactions, the patterns of reactions you have. Let's say you react certain things always like that. It means it will be very likely that will happen more. And you don't react certain things, and then what I'm trying to say is, let's say if I go to certain place and my friend lives there, so that's my reaction. Yeah? Because since I already know my friends live there, and then if I'm walking around and I see a lot of people, it's very likely that I will see my friends and recognize it very soon, because I'm kind of expecting it. This is my habit. And let's say there's place where usually my friend never goes, or he say I will never go there, and I go there and suddenly he's there. It's very unlikely that I will see him in the crowd, because I'm not expecting it. I don't have that habit. I haven't created that habit to do that. So I'm not aware of that, because when you try to expect something, you focus all your attention. So even though it's there, you don't see it, because your focus is in one thing and you will miss the second thing. So when I think that, oh, I might meet my friend because he lives there, it's very likely I will see it. Instead of going to some places that I'm not expecting it, then seeing it, even though it's there. Because the habit of my reaction, so to speak, or let's say I'm expecting, so all my attention kind of how to say, sends its energy towards that, whichever the aim or the mind that I'm focusing over. So the one good thing about this is that, first of all, let's say when anger happens, you don't look at anger as a one thing. You just look at it as a process of thought that is based on the object, subject, and reaction towards the object. And whether this brings a good result or not depends on what kind of right perceptions, right reactions, and the right actions that you have or not. So it gives us quite a clear pictures of actually our thoughts. So whether it is a good thought, or it is a bad thought, or it's a healthy thought, or it's an unhealthy thought. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm anger, or anger is bad, or this and that, you will have this very objective perspective of your thought and your thought process, where it gives you place to work with it. Because otherwise, I have anger, that's it, and anyway I will have it. I cannot do anything. I'm an angry person, but actually it's not really like that. There's so many things. If you change the causes and conditions, you can change the result, and that is how nature of things. When you see that, again, the very important part of this is that when we say meditation, we don't have to stop thought, or we don't have to kind of block the thought, or we don't have to fight with thought, You just have to filter, and you just have to choose the healthy one, in a way. I'm talking as in the whole, when we say meditation. Of course, we can, when we do a particular meditation, then maybe we can say, oh, I'm now doing shamatha, I'm focusing on that. And when we say, oh, I'm now doing vipassana, so I'm trying to dissect things, penetrate things. But the foundation, the basic idea ever is that when we say meditation, we are working with the mind rather than against the mind. And mostly that's what picture comes in our mind when we say I'm meditating, or my thought is problem, I have so many bad thoughts, and as if thought is kind of like a disease or something like that, and you try to go away from it, and then it doesn't work, but it's also not very good idea to start with the meditation. I think mostly we give up because you try to go away from the thought through the thought. It doesn't work that way. It's like trying to run away from your own shadow. Once you know the process, then you get certain kind of actually confident. Oh, something that I can do. Doesn't really matter how angry you are, how many thoughts you have, how many habits you have, but it's not just something that is ingrained, or that is something that you cannot do anything. There's a lot of things that you can do actually, but of course it doesn't happen suddenly everything. It takes some kind of wisdom, knowledge, it takes some sort of structures, and it takes some kind of method and the continuity to build up the right perception with the right reactions. Usually when we, in Tibetan, we use word mind training. Yeah, so we say mind training. It's kind of like another name for practice or the meditation as well. So if you look at this process, and then you will see, if you put all this together, because you have a mind, so what should we do, since everything is based on this mind? So there's a healthy mind, there's an unhealthy mind. And in fact, actually, it also has a connotation of purification, sense that we have to look at the process of the mind and just purify all these negative perceptions and the negative habits, reactions, and try to develop the positive perceptions and the positive reactions. And that's where actually what it means, mind training or mind purification. And when we say purification, there are many ways. Usually you can pray, you can make prostrations, and you can make supplication. That is also a part of purification, but it actually means is that purifying your negative perceptions and the negative habits of your mind. And that is what it means in this context also. And when you say mind training, you train your mind so that all your wrong perceptions and the wrong reactions are reduced or completely eliminated finally. And not only that, but to increase or to develop all the positive or the healthy or the quality aspects of our mind thoroughly. And actually even the word Buddha means that, the one who had thoroughly mastered in Tibetan, the Sangye, the purifications of the negativities of your mind and the complete development of the quality aspects of our mind. And it is also good to ask ourselves, like, okay, so we say, oh, I have a good thought, or I have a bad thought, yeah? How do we define which one is good thought and which one is bad thought? We can just ask ourselves and see what kind of result or the answers that we give to ourselves. Of course, lots of answers would be, it satisfies my sense, it satisfies my desire or whatever, that will be lots of, you have to do it honestly. You can see that the criteria to define what is good and bad is very much coming from this old ego habit. So it all goes back to the satisfying ego, satisfying desire, satisfying, We can see that bias decisions that is influenced by our ego when we talk about good thought or bad thought. Although intellectually, rationally, or if we ask, we say, oh, compassion is good, anger is bad, and desire is bad. Of course, we all talk about that. But when we react, if we really ask ourselves, is that a really criteria how we define good thought and bad thought? Usually it's not. If it satisfies to you, if it satisfies to your desire, if it fits your assumption, all this comes back to your my. All these things becomes a positive or good. And we react. We try to depend that. All the things that goes against that, we say wrong thing, bad thing. Try to, defend them coming from near to you. So you see very clearly, even though we think that I make my decision very clearly based, unbiasedly, based on knowledge. Of course, we do certain things, but most of our practical reactions and are coming from very much this just old habit that we have. Now, the very important question that we really have to ask genuinely ourselves, that's fine. I make my decision based on my, gut feeling, let's say. What's wrong with it, right? It makes me happy. The question is, it is healthy or not. You have to look at, observe, wisely. Okay, it's fine. Let's say I want to drink alcohol. I like it. It just makes me happy. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that, just saying that. But is this a healthy decision or not? Or how to trust this who make the decision? Whatever we feel it is, the inside of me, who comes to the ultimate kind of pilot, so to speak, pilot. And is it really trustworthy? Can I really rely on that person, that maybe not person, but I don't know, if that energy, so let's say, that thought, that system, let's say, ecosystem. Is it really reliable system, so that I can, it's a big decision, how you make your decision, so it has to be some kind of reliable. That's I think, you don't have to really go like, ego is so bad. Not really, but you have to think and do some introspection and say, okay, so what happens when when ego takes the charge and make the decisions and influences all the other your reactions? What happens? So these are the observations that you can do based on the object and the perception or the perspective, reaction, and the habit. And you can change the habit through the perception, and as well as you can start with the perception and change the habit. So both of them are, you can do both, but it just depends on how you do it, or from which perspective that you're looking for it. So what happens is that when you do that, actually we have lots of, because your mind is powerful and it's kind of reacting every time. It never gets tired. Even you are sleeping, we think that mind is sleeping, but of course, it's just working as a sense like we do it when we wake up, but still is working in, let's say, hibernate mode. So your mind works 24 hours and it has a lot of energy. So only question is, instead of thinking that thought is a problem, thought is just a mind, and then whether it becomes a problem or not, it's how you use that energy. So taking everything like anger, even the anger attachment, if you really observe, it's just energy there. But what happens is that when you misuse that energy, I react verbally, physically, and something happens which will turn into the consequences of my anger. But if you just look at anger itself, it's just energy. There's a lot of energy is happening because of causes and conditions. And if you use this energy of positively, healthy way, then actually all thoughts are usable thoughts. We can kind of say recycle thought. I don't know if you have anger turn into something. But so what I'm trying to say is that when we meditate, there's no reason to hate thought or completely thinking and fantasizing that if I get rid of all the thought, that will be my perfect meditation, or I will be so much into peace, This might be misunderstood about the meditation. So it's not how meditation of the mind works. You have to work with the mind, not to get rid out of mind. That's not how meditation. So it's very fundamental, I think, understanding of the mechanism of meditation or mind or our thought process that needs to be understood and be taken care of wisely. So to sum up, what I was trying to say is that our mind, thought, has certain parts, and it has a process, and it has a healthy process, unhealthy process. It's important to recognize and try to accustom with the healthy process. Sunam diyan dam je sikpa nyen dam ne ngepe danam pam je ne kega na chen balan tupa ye sepe solen dovare sho.
By this merit may all attain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free